I want to say thank you to our studio audience for joining us today on Delmarva Life. If you'd like to find out how you can join us, we'd love to have you here. You can be a member of our studio audience by visiting delmarvalife.com, clicking on the show tab. Mom, Dad, if the kids are at least 10, bring them. Have a great time here at the show, and then they get to see the Newsplex as well. And by the way, just in case you don't have computer access, you see that phone number there? Call it, 443-880-9116. Okay, I got a question for you. Have you ever had that itching, burning, gritty feeling in your eyes? Well, maybe they're red, maybe they tear up a lot. You might think it's just allergies, but it could conceivably be more than that. Joining us today to tell us more about dry eye is Dr. Todd Bezak. And thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate that. You are with the Chesapeake Eye Center. You're an ophthalmologist.
Correct.
The locations you got Berlin, Salisbury, and Millsboro. Okay.
That's right.
Dry eye, it really impacts a lot of people.
It really does. It's a very common condition. We see it all the time in the office. As many as 1 in 5 Americans have dry eye. And it really causes for some frustration for people and patients because they're struggling with, you know, the symptoms, which can be grittiness of the eyes, and sometimes they don't find a good answer as to what's going on.
Okay, so can you explain what it is?
Sure. Well, what it actually is it's a decrease in really the integrity of the tear film. Now, the tear film is something that sits on the front surface of the eye, which gives a nice little lubrication every time we blink our eyes. Tears are actually produced on the eyelids, and pushed onto the front surface of the eye. Okay. Anytime we have a decrease in that integrity of that tear film, it's considered dry eye.
So what kind of symptoms would I look for if I think I might have dry eye?
All the symptoms that you would really think of as annoying as far as your eyes are concerned.
Okay.
Grittiness, redness, itching, irritation, even blurred vision, and perhaps really the hallmark of it is tearing. Now, that may sound to be backwards if you say, what's dry eye? And I say it's when you have a tearing eye.
Yeah.
That's because there are a few different types of tears that are always occurring on the front surface of the eye. There's what we call the basal amount of tears, ones that are always being produced on the front surface of the eye and keeping the eye at a normal level of moisture. When the eye becomes decreased in its tear flow, or when it gets dry, there's now a second type of tear called a reflex tear that comes in, and that's the type of tear that we typically get when something is in our eyes or the wind is blowing at us. The problem with that reflexive type of tear is it doesn't know how much tear to send, and it sends the waterworks, it sends everything. So when it sends everything, now you start tearing up and now tears are running down your face. So that's why you're actually having a tearing eye when the eyes are dry.
Okay, is this predominant in anybody? Is there anybody that's more prevalent to get it?
Absolutely. First of all, it's common in all age groups. And depending on what sort of lifestyle you're leading, but definitely more common as we age. The older we get, the more common dry eye is because really our body dries out as we move through life.
Yeah.
Now it's also more common. We see it more commonly in women than men.
Okay. And
especially in postmenopausal women. And then, of course, in women that are taking birth control pills also dries the eyes out a little bit more. Okay. Talking about in the environment, anyone who's a surfer or a swimmer, especially in the Delmarva region, that's exposing their eyes to salt water, sun, wind, are more apt to get dry eye and these types of symptoms. There's also certain medications that can dry our bodies out, such as antihistamines and diuretics that can lead to dry eye. And then thirdly, there are medical conditions, autoimmune disorders that can cause our bodies to really carry less water content than we want to, which can lead to dryness of the eyes.
Is there anything our doctor can look for to see if we have dry eye?
Well, specifically when you come to see the ophthalmologist, when you come into our office, there's a battery of tests that we run all of our patients through. And one of them specifically is where we put some staining drops in the eyes. They have a nice yellow tint to them, and we have a photo here. And this yellow tint reacts with a blue light that I have on my microscope. And it really can point out some scratches that are in the front part of the eye, what the consistency of that tear film is, if there are any irregularities in it. If there are, they jump right out to us. And so that's a finding we find at the microscope. Now, we can also do an objective test in the office where we slip a piece of filter paper right inside your eyelid, and we let it sit there for a number of seconds, usually 90 seconds. Right. And your normal tear flow will wet that filter paper. There's a certain amount that we find is considered to be normal. If it's not, hasn't reached that level, we can objectively say, yes, you have dry eye.
Okay, so is there anything I can, are there any foods, is there anything I can do as far as my intake to try to prevent this?
Absolutely. Well, we always recommend a balanced diet, and I specifically recommend some vitamins also. On the vitamin route, a daily multivitamin I recommend to all patients, no matter whether you have dry eye or cataract or macular degeneration, whatever sort of medical or eye issue you have, I love a multivitamin. But also omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in fish oil capsules, flaxseed oil, I find very helpful. And as far as diet's concerned, you know, a balanced diet full of fruits and vegetables. And when I talk about vegetables, the ones that some of us don't like, but the ones that are your spinach, your green leafy vegetables,
right,
your carrots, the ones that are full of beta carotene.
So all these things are good to do if you have dry eye.
Correct.
To prevent dry eye, would you recommend anything specific?
Well, if you're looking for prevention of dry eye, you want, especially living on the shore and being this time of year in the summer where it's hot, you want to make sure you're well hydrated. The water intake that you do definitely contributes to how thick that tear film is. Of course, we recommend not smoking. You'll hear from your internal medicine doctor, your family doctor, your cardiologist not to smoke. Of course, it can lead to heart attack, to stroke, to cancers. You don't always hear your eye doctor talking about not smoking. It can absolutely affect your tear film. It can lead to other terrible disorders such as macular degeneration. So now you've heard it from me also, smoking is a bad thing.
What about contacts?
Contact lenses are an interesting bag. Anyone who is taking or is using contact lenses should be aware that there are many secondary problems that can come from just the privilege of wearing contacts. And if you're abusing contacts, if you're wearing them longer than your doctor recommends, it can make your eyes very gritty and irritated. It can affect that tear film. Okay. So yes.
How about that? Okay, so you've got, let's say we've done what we can, we still come up with dry eye, the doctor says, yep, you got it. What kind of treatments are there for dry eye?
Luckily, there are many treatments, and the treatments are all based upon what the root cause of that dryness is. Tears are always being produced on the eye, but it's more than just salt water. There's actually a consistency, sort of a mixture that's going into that tear. Mostly it's salt water, but there's also an oily lipid layer to that. And that lipid layer sits on the very front surface of the tear film. The reason it's there is to protect from evaporation of the tear film. So you can have a decrease of all these types of tears, the entire mixture, or just one component of that. And that's what breaks down the different levels of what dry eye is.
Okay.
So that being said, in addition to the preventative measures we talked about, there's some artificial tear drops that your doctor will recommend, and they're typically over the counter. And you can put them in 1 or 2 times a day, and ranging all the way up to 7, 8, even every hour while you're awake.
Right.
And for a lot of patients, that controls the symptoms.
Okay.
In addition to that, there are some lid hygiene recommendations that we typically make, meaning to actually take good care of your eye lids and where the oil is pushed out onto the front surface of the eye. We can do that at home with a warm washcloth, with maybe even a little Johnson's baby shampoo on the warm washcloth, scrubbing the eyes maybe once a day, probably at bedtime.
Okay.
In addition to that, if you'd like, there's some commercial towelettes that are sold over the counter that are pre-moistened, pre-detergent, that make it real easy just to clean the lids with a real mild detergent so you're not really irritating the eyes.
Dr. Todd Bezak, thank you so much for coming in. You've had some fascinating information. I had absolutely no clue about most of this. Thank you.
Glad to help. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that.
Had a blast.
Well, a whole lot of information there, and just in case you'd like to find out more about it, go to delmarvalife.com and you can click on the show tab. Still ahead on Delmarva Life, fresh is best, and aside from picking it directly from the farm fields, it doesn't get any fresher than the farmer's market. And at one farmer's market, the diversity of the products is key. The interesting and unique items that you will find at the Camden Avenue Farmer's Market. And many vendors say it's the best. Delmarva Life, life at its best here on Delmarva.